All right, score one for Les. All right. I do have to open up and say I'm very excited to give this talk. Again, I'm a product of Eagle Group. I've used the connections to get into US Bank after getting laid off. And the skills, the camaraderie, just a good 360 check on where I'm at and what I'm thinking or what I'm trying to say to other people has always been invaluable. And with that, I always thought that, transition's all right, but what about folks moving up? What about moving to the next level? What about, essentially breaking any glass ceiling that you think mentally and keep on striving, right? And I've always thought that just personally. So it's kind of just my own personal experiment to see what I can explore, what I can learn, what I can use, and how I can personally develop. So when putting this together, I did talk with Alan and kind of tested this out. I called it veteran value because I do believe veterans have a unique value that's sometimes either underappreciated, underutilized, or sometimes either underobserved in the workforce. So it's really a test case or experimental case. And on Tuesdays, I'd pick a Tuesday out of the month at Career Track and kind of layer it in. Now, what we found out was that these topics are pretty relevant regardless of whether or not you're transitioning, moving up, and some are even important if you're retired because you're just trying to manage your funds and whatever the case may be. So I'll jump into that shortly, but I do have some disclaimers. The first being is that I explore a lot of topics that are pretty hot topics. So I'm not going to have all the resources. I didn't ask every expert out there, but I do cite my sources. So you can check on that. The second thing is that these are not necessarily views of Eagle Group, so don't bind Eagle Group to it. You can blame me, in which case I'll just hide, and don't send any lawyers my way. I will move fast through the slides, so it's not a 101 on anything in particular. I do shape it towards, again, the veteran and some specific points. If you want to do additional research, again, these are saved on the Eagle Group YouTube. We're actually go into it a little bit further. So I have 4 topics and I believe a bonus for today. Each one of those was like 25 in itself. But the whole idea here is to get these subjects out there, give you a perspective, give you some idea points, and for you to, essentially put it in your lens. And I'll go into that further. It's a great series. And again, I love the fact that we have a lot of folks that are contributing to this that are experts in our group. And I would consider them to be very well knowledgeable. And they give you, again, a realistic approach. Sometimes you ask your friend, hey, am I good? And they're like, oh, yeah, you're great. And you go and you bomb. And you're like, what? I thought I was good, right? Well, they're not an expert in essentially what you're trying to do most times. So, and then you're not alone, right? So I didn't do this alone. And some of the things that I've updated for this talk will be different than the YouTube because I just think that the feedback after we had some of those sessions, the open discussion on the Tuesday meetings were fantastic. I mean, we even went into some rabbit holes because we could a little bit longer, right? And it just, made me think about new topics, new ways of looking at that. And again, new things that I may look at for researching the value. So grab some food. See, I told you I'd give a shot back to Adam. We don't leave chow behind, right? So grab some food, grab another drink. I don't care if you move around or even ask questions. I'll monitor the time and keep us on pace. And let's buckle up, enjoy the ride. Here we go. All right. So the agenda, I'm just going to go through, again, pretty darn quick. If you want me to stop on something, just raise your hand, yell out, be like, Les! Okay, so there we go. All right, getting paid what you're worth. This is a huge topic, right? Paid for purpose, quiet quitting. Well, we have seen that before, right? Inverting inflation. It really is the inflation topic, right? And then a bonus topic, just to keep it all lively, right? There you go. And I have Tony Stark on there because who doesn't want to be Tony Stark? I'm thinking Iron Man, Tony Stark, but the real life guy too, the actor, he's pretty rich as well. So there we go. Let's kick right in. And literally, I say, who doesn't want to be Tony Stark? All right, veteran value, getting paid what you're worth. I do kind of approach these in the same structure over and over again. What you'll see is I'll try to define what they are. I won't read it to you, mostly because I'm at an angle. I'll give kind of like the so what, right? Why the heck are we even talking about it? Maybe some antidotes, and then obviously something that you take away, or some misnomers that I think lead people astray. So literally, there you go. We're going to fly right through it. All right, this one is one of the subjects I've gotten the most. And literally, I've kept kind of count in Eagle Group. Alan, keep me honest, but I mean, literally with the numbers of folks over the last 3 years, I believe that in some shape, fashion, or form, I've been engaged about this topic from 100 people in some shape, fashion, or form, right? But I do believe that they've landed about $10 million worth of bonuses, compensation, salaries. That's not compounded. Like if they earned that 4 years ago, we added up. I mean, like they're using these principles to go in, and some of them aren't jumping all the way waist deep, right? But they're using some of these principles to have great discussions with either their managers, directors, or executives. And so the first one is value, right? Getting paid what you're worth. It's about value. And the first part about this is fair return. You want to get a fair return on that value. The second piece is we wanted money, right? Well, I wanted money. Someone might want, plums, dingbats, widgets. I want money, right? The other thing is in comparison to what, right? So again, these are very rudimentary fundamental items, but when you actually think about it, right, and it is desirable because you could want something, there could be a value, but if you don't desire it today, well then, holy smokes, you're still missing a component. These 4 components, we broke it down because again, what you're worth is essentially these 4 things when you're talking to somebody that's about to interview you, or if you're trying to assess your value within your own company to look at where you're going to move up, right? Where you're going to go. And like I said, if you're retired, a lot of people look at stock companies, mutual funds, and hedge funds by the executives are running, and they're saying, hey, who's doing that? Do they have a good grasp on this? And we're finding out some of them may not. Crypto. Someone said crypto. All right. There you go. All right. So I do try to keep it lively. We do have some pretty cool pictures, at least I think it's cool. All right. Fair return. And I'll go through these. Yes, your skills, your expertise, what you bring to the table, right? You need to get that evaluated. And the reason why I say go to a team is talk to folks, right? Do you have this particular IT skill? Do you do something or have experience in something that no one else has? I heard about this guy that interviewed at one of my old companies. He goes, yeah, I know Excel really well. Like mastery? I was like, yeah, probably mastery. I was like, well, why do you think you mastered it? Well, I built Excel at Microsoft. So there you go, right? Worth in money, right? Now, when I get to this subject, a lot of people are just kind of skittish. They're like, well, how much do you want to make? I don't know what that is, but it wasn't very. For some reason, right, we get to the money amount and we kind of like, well, I kind of want to make this. I go, great, let's put that out there. And I go, sure. It's like, it's kind of a big number. So it's more than I make now. I go, why not? Because this whole thing, right, is we're doing the evaluation. If you think you're worth something or you want to stretch, why not put that out there? Because what do you have to do next, right? Fair return. So you can't just go out there and just be like, I'm worth whatever. And the reason why I have this is because I do take folks through a plan. I go, hey, listen, for every industry, it's not this ratio, but usually you have a 10 by 10, which is a 100 ratio. If you're in sales, right, it's probably a lower ratio. You sell something, they're going to give you a comp. You're going to get that back in your pocket, right? But for others, it could be a 100 ratio or it could be a 1,000 ratio. It depends on what role you play, right, to impact the company. But let's just take scenario 1. Someone wants 100,000, right? Let me just use a round number, all right? And the multiplier is 10. Why 10? Because after expenses, that's probably what the company has in net income to pay for your role. And then you go, why multiply it again? Because that net expenses, right, 90% of the company is usually tagged with something, CapEx, expenditures, whatever the case may be. So, in your control, have you managed $10 million? And the reason why I bring this up is a lot of times when infantry officers come to me, I was like, hey, I'm getting out of the military. They go, no, all I did was lead people. It's like, well, did you have rifles? Yeah, let's get that up. You have crypto and comm systems? Yeah. Did you sign for Humvee? Yeah. Did we have armored equipment? Yeah. It doesn't take very long to get to 10 million. And that's part of the story that we also tell, on Tuesdays and helping folks through. The other piece is that folks 10 years after getting out, they go, oh man, that's a great way to look at my next job, right? How to get promoted, because I've done this and I need to be getting up to that standard again because it was fun. I didn't think about it as money, but translating like that, super simple, right? So again, you want to get to that number, right? And sometimes it's a reality check. Maybe you didn't, right? Maybe you want 200,000, right? And you didn't manage 20 million. That's fine. It allows us to kind of vector in. And again, we do want to stretch. We're on your side. It's not like we're like, no, you can't do that, right? And it is the key to moving up. And the reason why is because it puts your sights down road. not where you're currently at. If you're staying where you're currently at, sometimes you fall asleep, right? You just do the daily business and don't do it, right? So again, now I said, and this is just another fancy way of saying that, right? So in comparison, now we take the company approach. Why? Because that's the other side of the equation. They're the ones that are going to pay for someone to hold that row, right? So if you look at expenses, human capital, what's left, right? And that profit is 9% is hanging out there. You want to be that 1% because guess what? They have plenty of money to hire you. They have plenty of money to promote you. They hopefully have plenty of money to give you a team as well to support you, right? So those are the key elements. Now, if you flip it, right, their number, hey, I did a cool thing. I just kept the same graph because why, right? I didn't invent the wheel. Look at the numbers that they're looking for you to manage. And again, when folks are moving up, right, I go, I'm going to move from a 10 million to 20 million, right? Again, your skills, your valuation. But you're like, hey, I want to get paid twice as much I'm getting paid right now. Holy smokes, I got to do that? Well, at least that gives you a goal, and we break down where you need to be, what skills you need to do, what additional responsibilities, right? And it gives you a plan, and it gives you a very focused plan. And when we have experts in different industries, it keys you really in, and you don't waste time doing other stuff. Pretty cool, right? All right. And again, kind of the same thing, except for the company side. They're looking for these in the opposite direction, right? Kind of an epiphany. All right. Now, I will warn you, right, is desirable. These next slides are going to be an eye chart. They're going to be, but again, this is on YouTube. You can also search these. These are not things that Les made up, so unfortunately, I'm not super smart. But when you look at the perspective of a company, right, and what they're trying to accomplish, think about it, skills and knowledge, core values, so forth. I'm not going to read all these. What we will help, and what's good about this group and others, right, there's other groups out there, is where do you fit in? Where can you make the biggest impact? Some people are like, oh, I can do all those. Well, let's probably not take on that big slate of stuff, right? But where? Then I'll take you to this, just another way of looking at this, right? You can see a little bit more focused in areas of responsibility, right? Say, oh, and again, in my longer talk, we actually run through some scenarios, an example of two folks, and we place them out. We actually do a scenario with two of them, but on time, we're kind of going through it. But think about it, if you had multiple candidates, you're kind of plotting where you need to be, right? And it's pretty cool, especially if you've never seen this from the candidate side or an employee side. Again, should give you focus on where you want to look at, but also your strengths. Don't go try to do something and fail because it's not a strength of yours. Go someplace where you can be a champion and knock it out of the park, right? Because this slide, holy smokes, Les, you went from 30,000 feet to maybe 10,000. Now we're landing, right? Rubber meets the road. These should be your company objectives, and you should be asking some questions about that because you should be able to, again, say, hey, I can be a part of that. I need to be on that team. I need to be in those weekly meetings, monthly meetings. I want to help whoever's in charge of that, right? All right, misnomers. And if you need them, I can give you the deck, Becky. All right. And I won't go through all of them. These kind of actually make me very mad. And the reason is that they don't help, but I've heard them in conversations over and over again. The reason why I have this list is because I write it down, and the next time I talk to somebody, I check it, and I just have these tally marks, right? But the last one actually makes me the most irate. And I understand why. When we were growing up, me included, I was told that making money is bad. And it kind of fosters. And you don't get the whole story as a kid, but it kind of is just in your mind, right? It wasn't until an executive told me, Les, you're doing great. I'm going to give you some bonuses, and I'm going to propel you as far as you want to go, right? And I go, well, that's interesting. And then he goes, you come from the same background as me in the military, and just understand, making money isn't bad. What you do with the money can be bad, and it can magnify what you do, right? But the money itself isn't bad. And I was like, well, let's make a ton of money. All right. All right. Paid for purpose. This is, hey, I want to do something that means a purpose. I mean, let's face it, veterans, we get out of the military, it's a whole identity being in the military. It's a purpose. It's something that we feel really great about, and to be quite honest, we should. right? Now, definition. Do what you love, right? Yeah, again. Let's see. Anybody that's just working for fun, right? I want that job. Uh, complexity, corporations, right? Well, what's this purpose? I mean, entity that's in my way of having fun all the time is this corporation. Why don't they just give me the money, right? Getting paid, right? So the so what, right? Why, right? All right, definition. You can read something, or you can read this, right? It's probably the Merriam-Webster one. Let me go into maybe a little bit more detail, right? Do what you love. Let's break down this one. You hear this one a lot, right? Do what you love. You'll never work a day in your life or something like that, right? Steve Jobs, right? I love making, well, here's all the things. I love making more money, right? I love it when people really give me money. I mean, that's love. People just give me money. If that's my job, do that all day long, right? Just not sustainable for most of us. If you can do it, I recommend doing it, right? Now, I found this during my research, right? And it's super crazy, but I think most of you can catch on to this pretty darn quick. You have what I love at the top, what I get paid for at the bottom. Now, you could challenge the whole diagram or whatever the case may be. That's not what we're going to do to here today, right? We're just going to take it at face value and say, it's kind of good for explaining what I probably kind of feel sometimes. That what I love is in stark contrast of what I get paid for, right? If they can be closer adjoined, well then great. We have this, well, I don't know if this is this a Venn diagram on crack? I mean, like it's got more circles and crossover areas. But anyways, I think you guys get my point, and your whole purpose should be somewhere in the middle, right? But let's face it, your purpose kind of changes over life, right? And your needs and wants change. And yes, I may have been doing this when I half asleep with kids, and going through, it's like, what are my needs? What are my wants? How much do I need to get paid? Right? What is it? Medical, empty nest? Yeah, I want a fast car. That's why there's a spike there. All right. But then I go, these big circles, I'm always a challenger, if you guys haven't figured it out, right? Like circles, they're all evenly displaced. That's never real life, right? And I didn't think that. And then when I started playing around with the circles, I go, you're probably right. At certain points in this life cycle, I want certain things more, or I'll just grind it out at the job and hopefully have, some time afterwards with my cash to do stuff, going back at work, whatever the case may be, right? Now, companies, you like this other side of the coin thing, right? What are companies looking for? I thought this was a pretty epiphanal moment for myself. I was like, that's pretty cool. And kind of looks like the same thing. For those that don't know, Marine Corps, that was my service. So simple eye chart things, like if we didn't have PowerPoint today, I wouldn't be talking to you, right? But I mean, kind of looks like the same thing, right? Kinda. Well, let's actually take it a step further. Holy smokes, let's put them side by side, right? And isn't that and the reason why I found this is to be the epiphany as I go, think about it. If you can identify and clearly state what your items there, your career, your calling case, what you get paid for, and you can match them up with a company, isn't that a little bit more specific than what you usually get? Hey, go find a company that you can work for. Okay, right. Where do I start? That's usually right. If you know this, and then a little bit more helpful. And then again, if you grab this team that we have of great folks, even folks that haven't made it today, folks are just supporters, and they can have very intelligent, concise conversations about specific areas that would help you understand whether or not you can do the whole first part, getting paid what you're worth, right? So I do use this instance, and I wanted to bring this to light is, let's say this is Les Hoffman, right? And I've done these things, and I feel really good about this, and maybe I'm going to lead in with that. I don't put anything specific because when I was specific, people get lost in the details, right? It's not for that. But I find this company, everything kind of fits, feels, sounds good at face value, and then I start networking. I have coffees, and I find out that their biggest investment is right here. That's kind of good. It wasn't on my red list. Like I've done it before, but it really sucked and I don't want to do it anymore. So that's good, right? And then there's second, third, fourth, right? Well, if I find this out before I go into an interview, this bottom part, and I was going to leave heavy into that, and the company has it as an initiative, but they don't really have it on their radar as a big ticket item, well then guess what? I've just led into something and bored them in the first 5 seconds. But if I had some coffees and chats with folks and I find out 70%, this investment thing, holy smokes, and it's something that I've done in the past, and I can line it up, it's right on my resume, I could talk probably days on it, I probably shouldn't, but I could. Now I'm rocking and rolling, right? So again, it helps you align, but specifically, right, with where you're going to make the most impact when you're talking. Business reviews, end your reports. I literally try to do this every single time, so I'm not leaving anything on the table, right? Hope you do too, right? Oh, I actually like that one. I'll just pause for a second. Scrabble, right? But clever Scrabble. All right. So how do I leverage this knowledge? Again, Venn diagrams, cool things, right? You can find the purpose. But here's where the money hits the road. And the reason why it's important from a metric standpoint, right? See, average performers, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of people that are average. Great. That's the whole definition of it. Great, Les, thanks. High performers, right? Not as many of them. But I don't always believe that the high performers are the ones always cranking out the most work, right? They're the ones most aligned and hypothetically doing probably average work, right? But their work makes multiples of impact. The reason why is, you take a look at this stat. Again, some of these are a little bit older, but I think if you took and pulled it or got a new source, it'd be relatively the same. All HR stuff from where I can remember is about the same thing. Think about the difference in this. And also think about over time. If this person never got a raise over 5 years, which I would think would be kind of impossible, but for linear math, I use it, right? And no extra bonuses, no raises or so forth. If you just look at the difference of 2.7, which again isn't bad year over year necessarily, you're getting something. But if you got 4.6, that's a $5,900 difference, right? But then you talk about bonuses, moving up faster, getting new responsibilities and so forth. And I'm not talking about having to necessarily be a leader. Some people got out of the military because they didn't want to lead people. I'm talking about, independent contributors are knocking this out as well, right? So again, that bottom number. All right. I know I'm going pretty quick. I'm going to pause there because I see folks smiling, shaking their heads. But if you want me to keep on going, I will have a Q&A section in the back if I can work this thing to go back to the slides. We good? All right. No one's fallen asleep yet. That's actually pretty good. All right. Win. Yeah. We'll keep it going. That's it. Hold on. All right. Keep your legs and hands inside the vehicle. All right. What's the true meaning? Quiet quitting. It's pretty interesting to me. I mean, I thought this was a pretty trendy topic, and then, everyone else is like, "Bus, you're late." But we'll go into it. All right, definition. This one, again, I warned you, there isn't a lot of necessarily concrete information on quiet quitting. This was kind of a cool one. Again, I love pictures, so the explanation of quiet quitting, right? And it kind of makes sense, right? But I think that it has a horrible name, right? Quiet quitting. When really all you're talking about is, hey, I shouldn't be defined by my work. I should be defined by like who I am and so forth, right? But when I also looked into it, I was like, let me cite my sources. Harvard Business did research on this. I mean, again, maybe I'm late to the show because they already had a diagram on it. But they go, it's about bad bosses, not bad employees, right? And again, quiet quitting makes it all about the employee. Well, it's not. If you look at this, what you'll see is that if you have a manager within these ratings, so like again, just like anything, a scale of 1 to 100, 100 being the best, if you got a great manager, you're going to do a whole bunch of extra, right? You're going to go above and beyond. They create an environment where you feel comfortable, nurtured, and they'll likely help you move forward, right? Well, is that everybody? No, because let's face it, outside of the military, there's not a lot of structure around leadership. In fact, I don't have a course right now that I'm signed up at US Bank for leadership. I sign myself up for stuff and get credit because it's online and so forth, right? I just want to show that I have a ton of leadership, but it's not involved in every curriculum. It's not involved in every meeting. It's not involved in every report, and it's not involved in every divestiture of the company, right? They say that it kind of is, but it's not blatantly forward like the military. Why? Because you don't see a lot of small unit leadership, right? You don't see a lot of folks that are empowered to take decisions and not get blasted if they're wrong, right? So with that being said, well, why now, right? Well, COVID obviously put it forefront because now your bosses can't hover over you at your desk to know exactly what's on your double screen, triple screen for some of you, right? And you can see some of the things that perpetuate this, right? Work-life balance, stress by work. I'll let some folks take a photo of it. Again, I can get you the slides, but if you need me to stand over here like that too, I can do that. All right. Right. And not thinking about it, I picked up this subject, but it kind of pertains back to the diagram that I found before, right? What's driving some of these instances? Why did COVID exacerbate a lot of these feelings? What did it try to drum up, right? But then the key thing here too is, have we been financially fooled? And again, I do try to tie back into, if a lot of people are feeling something, there's something there, right? And what you can see in this chart here, after was it 1976, you can look at companies were automating, companies were leveraging, companies were making multipliers based on either the technology that they were driving, robotics, just buying better analytics, right? And leveraging that details, but look at the hourly compensation. So literally, if you worked harder, were you going to get paid more? I think the general feeling was no, right? So it isn't a skew that people are like, wow, I killed myself 2 years, didn't get anything. I didn't work as hard the third year, got exactly the 4.6 that I was expecting, and I feel great. Well, and then also gaining back some time on your commute, not having to go into work and so forth, right? Again, bring it to the forefront. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but also be careful, right? Because this right now, this quiet quitting has become quiet firing, right? So you don't want to be like, hey, I'm quiet quitting, but I'm still here to work, right? Again, I think it's named most inappropriately. But then the other side too is that, hey, perceptions a lot of times is reality, right? And this is the other warning. I do follow economics, especially the macroeconomics, a lot. I'll get into a little bit further why here because I think it's useful for folks. But if you look at the inflation, right, and how it's affecting, and you also look at earning potential and some of the things that are just built inherently against you, the reason why we tried to feed these mechanisms, these skills, this just better way of learning and applying some of the things less failed at and try to get better at, whatever you want to call it, so that you can battle these things that you have no control over with things that you do, right? And then again, you can probably see inflation, layoffs. So another thing is when we talk about all these subjects about companies, and we all of a sudden we see these layoffs, the market saw this about 3 months ago, right? They knew that some of these companies were already hedging. They had blown their second quarter earnings. They were below and underperforming the market and their index, right? They knew this was coming and they already hedged out of it. So again, it's not because they have a crystal ball. It's because they're literally looking at the same dynamics. Who's leading these companies? What do they need to make? And what are they going to do to make sure that they perform in probably a later quarter. So I will hit on a couple of these. Go back, Les. Work harder, play harder. I like that one because I try to play harder. But include a fun schedule. So this one was something, I'm not going to go into large detail about it, but I kind of worked into this after me and my wife had our first kid, and now definitely with 2 kids, right? But if you don't incorporate the fun in it, then why are you working so hard in the first place, right? You got a great goose egg for when you retire, but I'll be old by then. I want my fast car now or sooner or whatever the case may be. And that fast car dream has turned into pumpkins and orchids and stuff like that for kids and stuff. So, but anyways, my dream is being fulfilled, right? And I am actually happy about it. And what we're talking about is not necessarily a windfall, winning the lottery, although someone won $2 billion, ridiculous. But it should give you some financial freedom to make the choices that you've earned, right? All right. And I did the whole thing on this whole inflation thing because it's important for some people to know. Not everyone understands it. So literally the first thing is what the heck is it, right? Again, you're getting my definition of it. So if you watch CNN, Fox, whatever the case may be, Bloomberg, it might not match up, right? But I use a caricature because it gets people's attention. And there you go. And then you can see this graph, right? And the graph part is the fact that it's darn important. And what we mean is, I go to my next slide, 80,000 different things are being tracked, meaning that all these things now cost more. That just sucks, right? I mean, I don't like paying more for the just stuff you need and then having to make tough decisions about the stuff I want, right? And I like this one because it's really the weighted relevance, right? And I show you this because those are somewhat relevant numbers. I think some of that's been adjusted, but they're within the ballpark, right? So if you look at these things, housing at 42%, transportation, food, those are stuff you can relate to. I don't know about the other 79,000 items out there, but these ones look pretty darn important. Look like things I can relate to, understand pretty quickly, right? Less purchasing power, less savings, right? Loss of goods and services, right? This one's just to make sure, again. All right, so what can you do? Spend less. Well, that's not super sexy at all. Spending, yeah, whatever. All right, spend differently. You're just kind of forced into it. I bonds. Anybody here know what I bonds are? There you go. Winner, winner, right? Essentially, when interest goes up, government pays you higher interest back on I bonds. No one ever knows about them until the world sucks, because that's not supposed to happen. I think it's at 6% or something. You get paid out semi-annually, right? Stocks, real estate. So again, even if you're retired, you're probably looking at this. You're probably buying I bonds now that Les told you. Invest in yourself. And I'm going to focus on the last one because really a lot of these things happening in the macro environment you can't control. It's going to happen. You have needs, right? But some of these things you can put into effect now. And now I would argue is the best time to enact, right? And get the raises and promotion. Yeah, work on that, right? Because companies are feeling it too. So I just talked about the interpersonal, the me, the I, the inward looking. But when we look externally, these companies are facing it too. And they have people that are making these tough decisions. And guess how many people want to hang out with them? Nobody. Nobody wants to hang out with them. But guess who they would like to hang out with them? Anybody. So right then and there, right? That's always, and these, again, higher interest rates, it costs them more for the same goods. Can they pass it on to customers? Sometimes no. Sometimes customers are like, I'm going to choose something else, right? Opportunity cost lost. Again, profitability, rebalancing. That's another way of saying layoffs, right? It's not a long-term strategy, so that's never really good, right? And the last one, somebody just there to engage. You don't have to be an expert on it, but again, misery, if you have a buddy getting you through it, just like the military, right? A little bit better. And I will tell you, people remember, when I got laid off at C.H. Robinson, I was taken off into a different group. There's only 4 of us, and I was immediately hired again in a different job. I thought it was a little bit weird that they actually had to fire me, but anyways, besides the point, I was literally talking to executives about these items. I didn't know the whole picture. I didn't know the layoffs were coming, but I did know that there was going to be some changes, and I was going to be a part of those changes. That was it. Like, that was kind of the profound awakening for me, right? And again, there's different areas that you can have some of these discussions. And the key here is, some people are like, well, talk to your boss about what's going on. Don't waste your time doing that. That's not specific enough, right? So say, hey, today at the company, I know our costs of these goods are going, through the manufacturing line have gone up, and orders have decreased. Is there something I can do to help, or is something I can do to jump in, or is there something that we need to analyze from a data standpoint to get us smarter, faster, right, than the competition? And you don't need to beat, and that's the other thing I love about Eagle Group is when we talk to folks, I don't need to beat the entire competition or statistics. I use that as a baseline, right? When I'm trying to put someone in a job, I don't need to fill all those jobs and wherever the unemployment rate is at. I'm just looking for that one person, right? And if there's 5 openings and I got one person, should be a shoo-in. I don't have to worry about, the other 5,000 people out there looking for the same job, right? And that's the goal. That's how you narrow it down and get very concise on that. All right, digital deflation. I thought this was interesting because, again, we talk about automation, the investments in digital, how this becomes an opportunity for companies to actually do it. They've had the money. They could have done it. It's now something's kicking them in the rear to actually get it done, right? And actions. So this is, saying same approach with your own finances. Break it down. Where does it hurt the most for your company? Talk to your bosses. Talk to whomever is really in control of that. You'll get on the radar by just asking the question because again, they're sitting by themselves in the lunchroom, right? No one wants to talk about this, right? And then again, results are highly known, especially if you can attribute your skills to it, right? All right, bonus one, cash flow. This is not a full deck, and I know we're getting to time, but I thought this one was interesting because I'm getting asked this a lot, especially right now with the stock's down and yada yada, right? And I do go back to this one. So, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Anybody hear about that? That guy author. So essentially, yeah. So what was the guy's name? I can never pronounce it right. Yeah. So what's that? Yeah, he's Hawaiian. So he comes up with this whole concept of writing this book because he had two dads. He had a poor dad with essentially habits that kept him poor, and a rich dad, which he hung out with a lot apparently. Well, anyways, but he found that there were different items, and again, I don't know this book by heart, but hold on a second. Let me pull these up real quick. The E is employee, right? You're getting traded money for your time. Makes sense. Well, most of us do that. It's not a bad place to be in. Hopefully get more money for your time under what you're worth, hence the first presentation, right? Now you move up to self-employed and you might have more control, but you also have more risk. You can also make more money and yada, yada, right? Then you get into business owner, and that's leveraging a system. And as you look at these 5 categories, right, leveraging a system, you start realizing that the hours that you're putting into it, maybe a multiplier, maybe you have folks doing the work for you. Cool, right? The 2 quadrants I look at are the employee, because most of us are in that, and the investor, 401k, stock, right? So when the stock market's doing good, you could be doing somewhere between 6 and 8%. This one doesn't require your time at all. I just buy a stock. It's being managed by somebody that's way smarter than me. It's usually indexing somewhere that's going up. And if I sit on it for, 6 years or the law of 72, which you girls love, you'll double your money in a certain amount of time based on that ratio. Well, that's pretty good, right? Especially if you don't have to sell or take or draw from any of it right now. So the biggest advice is, make money with your time, get paid higher, but then also invest the money that you're not spending. And obviously that sucks when you're younger, especially in the military, because you want to buy that car and your bank account to invest is 0, right? But when you do get it, right, then influence, right? You can be influenced to buy certain things like cryptocurrency and so forth, but I always say stay smart. Buy something that you know, right? Restaurant chains, Chipotle, I think they're pretty good. Home Depot, but do your research, or you can just ride the index, right? S&P 500, NASDAQ. But here's where I usually tell folks to be careful of is their own 401k. A lot of companies have match. And then the other thing too is don't just let your 401k sit there. Right now would be a good time to take a look at it and make sure you have the right balance, international versus domestic stocks and so forth. Again, I'm not selling anything, so I can just freely say that a lot of times when you're looking at the investment, if you're making money and you're investing money, now you got 2 quadrants out of the 4. There you go, right? And if you're looking for stock advice, I don't give it out because I take the risk myself. I don't want to get blamed for anyone else's stuff. But there's plenty of wealth advisors out there that you can have this conversation very specifically about what you're looking at and just ask them a ton of questions. That's their whole job, right? All right. Oh, man, I'm 2 minutes over. Fire away. I know. Yep, questions. It's on the board.